What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Keith and Mike Watch Star Trek Deep Space Nine. I forgot the title of our show.
That was a good start.
I mean, I feel like I pulled up. You know, I was going to go into the flight deck, but I was able to abort the landing. We are today talking about the Muse, one of the most spoken about, the iconic episode of Deep Space. It is often talked about. I'm not going to talk about which category it is often talked about, but it is very much a it's on the hard end of one of the scales. So
hard, but for sure. Jake hard for 43 minutes of this thing.
I mean, for sure. But I'm not going to get into that until we've discussed, because I don't want to interfere with Mike's brain hole on this. We are recording this today on Valentine's Day. Mike, how are you celebrating Valentine's Day?
Myself and CEO Jen are going to go see When Harry Met Sally on the big screen. She's making a nice little lunch for us, and nice. I'm watching Star Trek with you, bud.
Yeah, you are.
I'm excited to do so, actually. It's always, I had a kind of it's been crazy week, really busy, and I know you had a crazy week as well. So it's always nice when you can kind of get through all the stress and sit down and pop on. I posted the watch along. Did you know you can watch the show with me, guys, every week at patreon.com/KandM. Usually we do Monday nights or Tuesday nights. Scheduling was up in the air this week, so it was last minute. I posted with mere 30 minutes warning, Keith, and was still able to pull a couple of patrons to come on and watch with me. So thank you to everyone who joined me, and all of you who joined me after the fact on the recorded version, which you can get in on patreon.com/KandM. Spoiler alert, lots of more watch-along stuff going to be happening on the Patreon, so think about it.
Yes, indeed. Well, I will be celebrating Valentine's Day as a lonely single geek as usual. But I thought it was appropriate because, as people follow the show, I've recently, used to be married, no longer married. However, one of my Christmas gifts this year was this t-shirt, which I feel I'm very proud of.
Hey!
There it is, folks. That is how I'm celebrating Valentine's Day by not pissing off your exes.
Hey, that's great. That's nice. What a nice gift from whomever gave
I know. I'm proud of it. So you hear that, ladies?
I like a sense of humor that's tongue in cheek, because the relationship no longer involves tongues in cheeks.
Gross. Well, just remember, ladies, I could be your friendly ex someday.
Listen, Keith is a writer, and Keith may need somebody to massage his head to get those good ideas a-flowing, if you know what I'm saying.
I mean, it's definitely possible. All right, so
Keith looking for a big four-headed woman to stroke his creative muscle.
I mean, you can't have two big foreheads in one marriage. That's too much.
That's a 10 head, and it's off the charts.
It's a 10 head, and you're reflecting the sun back. You're gonna, we're gonna mess up our climate even further.
This is terrible.
I'm so sorry, folks. But look, if you're this far into the show, you know what you're getting. So, what did we get last week?
Yeah.
In Shattered Mirror, let me give you your viewer ratings. Out of 100 self-sealing stem bolts, as we all know, Joshua Cronin gave it an 82, Jason Moe with a 73, Harry Pothead with a 65, Kevin Miles, yay, with an 88, and the mysterious Anne with at 65 again. I think we were sort of in the middle of all of that. If you would like me to read your rating or review, just drop it down here in the YouTube comments. You can also, if you care to have your review read, you can leave us a super thanks on the thingy below, and we will happily read your comment. We'll say pretty much anything. So,
it's true.
There it is.
Yeah.
Just put it in there. We'll read it. Doesn't even have to be about the episode.
Keith will call and do your outgoing voicemail on your cell phone if you want. He's
I
great
Oh
secretary
yeah,
voice.
I mean, I haven't even recorded my own.
It just says the numbers.
Just the default. Yeah, that's fine. But yeah, of course I'll read your voicemail. I mean, so if you want to confuse your friends about an utter nobody,
Oh man, we should start doing cameo, just so like the one cameo we do, and someone can write back like, "Who?"
Nobody would cameo us. Oh yeah, so it's $50 for a cameo. Wait, you people have to pay you $50?
No, we
pay
give
you.
$50.
We pay you $50. Yeah, you're with me.
Yeah.
Great.
All right.
All right, let's talk about the Muse now that we're so artistically inspired, which aired on April 29th, 1996, only one day before my mother's birthday.
Happy birthday, my favorite mom of yours.
That's nice.
Yeah.
That's nice. Yeah. Well, if you missed it on the Out of Practice podcast, my mother and Mike have had a torrid love affair.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to hear that whole story of their love, you should.
She famously listens to this podcast.
She does not. Ooh.
Yeah,
She does not.
I hit the wrong button. This was going to be my singing. But what was the song? Let's do it.
Well, all right. So our top song continued to be "Because You Loved Me," Celine Dion's. Thanks for that. Sorry, Anne, while you're,
And sorry
doing
that
chores.
Celine's back in the popular culture for being frail. I hate that. I hate that people are pitting her against the greatness of Taylor Swift. But for all we know, they're gal pals. Let's stop making beef where there's no beef. We have real beef to worry about, folks.
Yeah, that fair enough. Fair enough. So, our top movie. Are you ready for this one?
Oh yeah.
The Quest.
Hmm.
Do you remember
Stumped
The
me.
Quest?
Stumped me. 1996.
1996.
I'm 16 years old.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have my license just yet. I've just got my first girlfriend.
Ooh.
Did not go see The Quest. I was on a different quest.
You're on a quest, and Mike, let me ask: did the quest succeed?
Keith, failure at the box office.
Failure at the box office. Disappointing returns at the box office.
Yeah.
But not for The Quest, which starred Jean-Claude Van Damme and Roger Moore, which I believe Van Damme actually even directed.
Someone was trying to capture the same magic as The Last Crusade with a different cast.
Yes, indeed. Well, it wasn't your Last Crusade. It was just the one where your face didn't melt. All right, so Mike, while you were on your own personal quest that you were unsuccessful about, what were you watching on television?
Keith, ABC was airing a special called Put to the Test, which I don't know much about. I wish I did. Can't really gather much from just special Put to the Test.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, you just put us through the test of listening to that.
David E. Kelly was getting a 9.4 rating with the episode The Parent Rap on Chicago Hope, which was
Love
a great
Chicago
CBS lineup. We had The Nanny, all new, Dave's World, all new, Murphy Brown, all new, Sybil, all new, followed by the 10 o'clock hour with Chicago Hope. Very nice.
Mandy Patinkin.
Yeah.
That was so good.
And then most importantly and most interestingly, we had an NBC special that I just loved when these would air, and it was an all-star TV bloopers. They would just they would dedicate an hour to just showing bloopers from old TV shows, which I always enjoyed. And of course, we had Star Trek's Voyager, which Keith will tell us more about momentarily.
Indeed. So yes, this episode of Voyager was The Thaw, in which Michael McKean plays a scary clown. It's an interesting episode. I remember the first time I saw it, I was like, I hate this. I want to jab my eyes out. This is horrible. But then as an adult, I rewatching, I'm like, oh, there's some psychological stuff going on here that's kind of interesting. And Michael McKean does a really good job. So there you go. We will get to it when Keith and Mike watch Star Trek Voyager in about 3 years.
Which was such a joke when Keith started saying it. And I was like, oh, but now it's become much, much less.
Like, we're going to do it.
Yeah, of a joke. It's clearly heading right for us. So
yeah, well, but this is where we can, wow, you had that all ready to go. But we will do, when we do Voyager, we're going to have segments with my brother who worked on the show. So that's going to be
cool.
more
Yeah,
interesting.
cool.
The weekly world news headline: There's no issue on the Google archive. I don't know if
Oh, that's last week. Okay.
No,
That's why
there
I
isn't
didn't
one.
update. Yep.
So I don't know if that's because they didn't release an issue, which I doubt, because they were perfectly happy to just re-release one from 3 weeks ago and pretending it was the same issue. So I'm assuming Google Archive just never got it. So there
yeah,
it
the
is.
extent of
We'll never know.
our research and our work is have one website that we look for this stuff bookmarked, and if it's not there,
Game
just
over.
don't do it. Yeah.
It doesn't exist.
Mhm.
That's pretty much exactly right. Well, you want to know what does exist? The director of the Muse, who is David Livingston, who last directed on Sons of Moog. This episode was written by Renee Echevarria, with a story by Renee Echevarria and Majel Barrett. And this is her only writing credit
I
ever.
would have been flabbergasted if there was a single writer on this episode.
Yes. Well, this is
Feels distinctly like 2 episodes smushed together.
Yeah. It's I think we're going to get into it in the next segment, but I believe that the A and B story got flopped at some point, and
that was one of my questions too. Is what is the A story in this episode?
Yeah, agreed. Well, let's discuss it in everybody's favorite segment. Now, Keith, waste your time
With what?
with trivial trivia. You know how in life, as we get older, we hope to gain a little bit of self-awareness,
We hope.
right? And we're like, to be able to look back on our work objectively and be able to say, like, hey, you know what? This was great, and maybe this wasn't so great.
Mhm.
Well, in 2012, looking back, director David Livingston stated that he wished the Muse had never been produced, remarking it was not good.
And thanks for joining us, folks. We'll see you next week.
Near the end, Onaya names Tarbold as one of the many authors she had inspired. Tarbold was the fictional poet whose Nightingale Woman was recited by Gary Mitchell in the second Star Trek pilot Where No Man Has Gone Before in 1965. Nice little inside. It's weird for a show that is so reviled. They have a lot of cool little Easter eggs and stuff that they're tying in here.
Yeah, I'm sure you're going to mention it, but Jake's story is Jake's story from The Visitor.
Anselm.
Which,
That's right.
had they not done that, this is a 3, right? But like
Yeah.
that Easter egg alone makes it important to the canon, in a way.
Right? In a weird way. That's right.
Because it answers one of the wormholes. Well, we'll get there. So
Yeah,
early
all
in
right.
the show.
We're still in trivial trivia,
Yeah.
buddy. We're not talking about wormholes yet. So Michael Ansara, who plays Jayal, played the iconic Klingon character Kang in Day of the Dove back in the original series, but of course Blood Oath here on Deep Space Nine.
You know,
Remember
that
when,
brings me up,
when-
Keith. There was a question I'm supposed to ask you.
Okay.
It was brought on by one of our patrons. I think
Uh-oh.
it's referring to this. Oh boy. You should ask Keith about when Bareil was the sexy ghost man on Next Gen with Dr. Crusher. This is not the time to segue into that, but just putting that on the table then.
Yes, not Bareil. Shakar.
Yes.
Shakar, the other bland white guy that Kira is banging for reasons. Oh yes, no. You know what? That would be a great patron watch along if we do Sub Rosa, which of course is where Crusher bangs a candle ghost played by
I famously
Shakar.
never said no to a sexy ghost of any sort. So
I mean, I haven't given an opportunity to say yes, but I feel like, as mentioned before, it's Valentine's Day, and I'm a single man and
when it comes
lonely
to
here in my
sexy
basement.
ghosts, I'm all consent.
I mean, if there's a candle somewhere, I mean, there are candles down. I have not had any sexy ghosts appear in my subterranean room in Rahway, New Jersey, but, one can dream. Anyway.
That is the title of a book that someone should write. There's a slash fanfic in
of
progress
like Keith
currently.
and a candle?
Yeah.
That is the saddest slashback ever. Anyway, the story that Jake is working on, when we see the text that he's working on his pad, is actually The Commodore by C.S. Forrester, an author of navigational stories that were loved by Gene Roddenberry. And Jake was also puttering on it in The Visitor. So every time they need text for Jake, they pull it from The Commodore. Interesting. This episode was nominated for an Emmy Award for Outstanding Costume Design for a Series.
I do love Renee's wedding garb. I think those blues are very beautiful.
Yeah, well, and Forehead Lady's outfit was great too. So it is interesting how often the costume design and makeup design gets nominated for Emmys on the worst episodes.
I thought she very much was serving me, to steal from RuPaul, who I was just watching a ton of. She was serving me Sigourney Weaver in Ghostbusters.
Oh, very much so. Yeah.
Once she's sort of glammed out.
RuPaul would have done this role very well.
Oh my God. Please.
Right?
Please, it would have been great.
He's tall in person.
Yeah.
Unbelievably tall. All right. Anyway, so John Paul Lona, one of the alien individuals who board deep space. Oh, this is great. This is our worlds coming together, Mike. Are you ready?
Yeah, give it to me.
All right. John Paul Lona didn't give it the weight it deserves. One of the alien individuals who board Deep Space Nine in the beginning won a walk-on role by designing the winning makeup for the alien in a competition run by Playmates Toys.
Wow,
Lona
nice.
named the character Runip and the species the Rizagians.
Nice, well said.
So, if I'd planned ahead, which of course I didn't, I would have grabbed one of the original Deep Space Nine figures that they came in. They came in with a little card to say, send in your makeup design, and you can get a walk-on on Deep Space Nine, and they paid it off. Here it is in this episode.
That's cool. That's awesome.
Super cool.
Side note, especially crossing streams, we often do these custom episodes on our Star Trek toy show, which we're going to spread out a little bit more nowadays, I think, just to kind of keep it fresh. But in the future, what I would love to see, because I think a Odo marriage 2 set would be a great custom little set.
Oh, I'm sure Josh Cronin's already made it.
Well, I'd like to see the picture, Josh.
You know what? I'm expecting it in my Facebook message
Before the
T-minus, like by end of day today. Yeah. I'm expecting it in my Facebook. Yeah, fun. But yeah, absolutely. That's a great. All the wedding figures, we need them. So the original idea for this episode came from Majel Barrett, of course, who pitched an idea to Ira Stephen Bear that Lwaxana Troy becomes pregnant and claims that the baby is Odo's. This led Renee Echevarria to write an episode with 4 primary storylines, all focusing on couples, the first of which I'm going to leave out for spoilers, but the other ones are Sisko and Cassidy Yates, O'Brien and Keiko, and of course Odo and Lwaxana. However, nobody was happy with the concept. According to Bear, the script meeting for a standard episode usually lasts 2 days, 3 if there are problems. The script meeting for the Muse lasted 6 days, the longest script meeting in the entire 7-year run of Deep Space Nine. However, even with all of that sorted out, the producers were unhappy. According to Ronald Moore, the notion of this exotic, beautiful older woman who comes to you and gets excited by watching you write is the most ridiculous idea. Only a writer would come up with that. Think of it. You're sitting there writing and she's just entranced. We watched that scene in dailies and thought, are we insane? What are we doing? How did we get here?
Wow, that's like almost verbatim my thoughts as I'm watching a lot of this episode.
And me, as a writer, I'm like,
yeah,
of course. Who wouldn't be enraptured by watching my genius?
Maybe one of the biggest laughs I've ever had. I'm going to tell it up front because it's so good. Is, of course, legendary patron Jason Tiberius Moe, who never misses a watch along. Even if he's like busy making dinner, he's always got us on in the background. And
amazing.
he was busy last night, and so he wasn't really participating in the chat, so it was just kind of me watching, but Jason was there. I knew I could feel him. And they get to that scene at the end where she's like, I've head screwed the greatest. Shakespeare, such and such. She's listing off things, and it just the one chat comes through in all caps. Varney! And I friggin' peed, man.
Oh my God.
I was like, touche.
That is hilarious.
Yeah.
Ugh. And I think perfectly teeing up the fact that I am going to be soft defending this episode as we go through.
You'll be the only one who was soft, Keith.
Yeah, well, fair enough.
You think that's my last
candle.
direction joke? It's not. Stay
No.
tuned.
Well, folks, you want to find out who paid for that terrible joke? That is our patrons. Mike, introduce everybody and introduce our new full-on sponsorship.
Brian Kimball, Beersock, Casey Clark, Jason Moe, Peter Banky, Frank Rinch, Joshua Cronin, Andrew Hayes, Jorge Navoa, and the mysterious household who were lovingly joined us last night. Worf's Big O, Moot Shivs, Charles Babbage, Harry Pothead, CRM Productions, Nikolay Ivanovich Lobachevsky. Once again, we send you our best well wishes. Get well soon, sir. Delusions at Noon, YouTube viewer James Hubbard, Chesley Anguished, JD Makes, Colin Dagan, Chris Mitchell, CRM, Pat, Joshua Cronin, JD, Lutz Kremer, Wyatt Eldridge, and welcome to the team Quark's Bar, which Keith does indeed include a parenthesis because the bar belongs to Quark in the future. Thanks to Quark's Bar, our first Canadian sponsor. Thank you so much.
Well, not our only Canadian sponsor.
Well,
no,
as far as it's part of this is a joke as the sponsor.
Our corporate sponsor.
Yeah.
At the highest level, which means, Quark's Bar, as a corporate sponsor, you are entitled to give us some copy to
we'll read it. Yeah, we'll have to read that
for Quark's Bar. We need to read an ad for Quark's Bar. So there you go. We already have the merch. Wait, here's somewhere. Do I have it? Yes. So not only do I have the Quark's Bar mug that CEO Jen gave us, I also have matches from Quark's Bar. Mike, you're not even looking at how cool this is.
Oh, that is cool. Sorry.
See?
I do have you
Quark's
on both
Bar.
screens, so I can always see.
We know you're not looking at that. Anyway,
did you know in 1996, Keith, Jay Leno visited Quark's Bar. And if I had been smart enough to look at this beforehand, I would have pulled it up, and this would have been a great thing to do in our pre-show.
Oh, I'm here at Quark's Bar.
Yeah, but he actually goes on set with Armin Shimmerman, and I will, I guess, just tell you all to Google it, because I'm not going to show it on YouTube.
I'm medium funny, and all the other comics hate me.
Yeah, does anybody like Jay Leno? I viscerally dislike Jay Leno, so.
Well, there you go.
Anyway, there you go.
How about you had my flawlessly terrible impression, which I've never done before. So
it's better than your, what's the one you tried to do the other? That was a bad one. Better forgotten.
Well,
better forgotten.
Look, I have the ones that I do fine. But the other ones, they're pretty terrible. All right, so let's talk about our guest stars here on this episode, which, of course, are Majel Barrett as Lwaxana Troi, Michael and Sarah back for the second time on Deep Space Nine as JL, and Meg Foster as Onoya. Now, Meg Foster, you might know from a great many terrific sci-fi roles, including from He-Man. Do you remember her on He-Man?
She was Skeletor's brain licker, right?
Yeah, the eyes.
Yeah,
the eyes you can definitely. And I also, utterly coincidentally, I turned on the 1989 underwater deep sea ripoff of The Thing, Leviathan, which I was watching Deep Space Nine. I turned on the other TV, and there she was again. A surprise. So legendary sci-fi. Also, a lot of Star Trek people on the He-Man movie. Of course, Frank Langella, who we saw on this show, but we might see a certain Voyager cast member as a main character there. So we'll get there. All right, folks, you know what it's time for? It's time to hop into our screening. Okay. Nailed it.
Before we get started today, I think it's only fair since I promised it earlier.
Welcome back, folks. Folks, we got a great show tonight. I think you're really going to...
It's just so annoying.
Problem in the green room.
What?
They can't find the TV remote.
Great acting skills. They're doing a whole bit here.
Yeah.
Finding the remote.
Sensors indicate it's coming from the 24th century.
Oh, God. This is embarrassing.
Where am I?
You get to see it with not all lit up, though, properly. You know what I mean? Kind of
Wow, this is Deep Space Nine.
Remember when the remote beeped?
Quark! I should have known a big-eared Ferengi would have my remote control. I don't know what you're talking about. This is a Cardassian Devastator. Do you know what some males would pay
And just
to get
Armin
their hands
going
on
for it, of course.
I don't know what I'd pay. I'll give you
I'm making the bit work.
Somebody's got to.
That's just Earth money. Worthless up here.
I saw the entire
If you want this
table
device,
wobbled.
You're going to have to provide a service in trade.
Service? What kind of service?
Question is, how far down
Doing that? Oh, come on,
this rabbit
Jay.
hole do I want to go?
All right, then how about this? Come on.
All right, it's only a minute and a half left here.
You
know, whispering, famously not
just you.
interesting
Promise?
to watch.
Nobody else around? Ferengi promise. All right, I'll do it. All right.
Oh, he's rubbing his lobes.
Oh, Jay.
That's enough, that's enough.
Yep, that's Jay Leno humor. Yep.
All right.
All right, let's go ahead.
It's got Leno to do.
Okay, so that was the bit. So I'm glad we went down that rabbit hole, because it reminds us of two things.
The entire bit was big ears.
Was we love
Stupid.
Armin Shimmerman, good sport, famously.
Wow,
Thanks
yeah,
to
truly.
Quark's Bar for sponsoring. They needed a new sponsorship, Keith, because famously they dropped out of the Tonight Show with Leno because he sucks.
Strong feelings from Mike about Jay Leno. So there you go. Wow, that was I mean, it seems appropriate. We're doing the Muse.
Yeah, you're right.
The Muse really struck Jay Leno with a Q-tip joke. All right, so in our teaser, we begin with a super cool flyby under the station. New camera motion for the series. I wonder, and I don't think so. I don't think yet whether they had digitized the station as opposed to the ships. But it was a really cool camera move that we had not seen before. Which especially if you're doing practically, was super expensive to do another flyby on the station. Because most of the moves that we see, we just recycled over and over and over again because they shot like 30 of them and like, we'll just mix them in. But that one was new. So Jake is on the promenade watching people coming off of the ships looking for story ideas. And as he watches them, all of his pitches are actually pretty good.
Me too. I was like, oh, these are all good episodes, man.
Like, I would definitely watch that. Oh, wait, go back one. I think that blue guy is the guy who won. He's the walk-on.
It's awesome.
Yeah, very cool. Definitely could have used that. So one of them, who might have been in the He-Man movie, spots Jake and makes eye contact. Later, Odo goes into his office to find a crying Lwaxana Troy. And she's preggo. He greets her like she's been there a while, but this is a shock to him, seeing her preggo. It was an interesting beat there because he's sort of like, oh, hey. And not like, hey, you came from the other side of the galaxy, but shocked about the preggo part. I don't know. Maybe there's another scene there we didn't know about. In Act 1, Troy explains that her husband is trying to take her baby. Apparently, she's married again. Famously, Troy's been married many, many times. And her husband's culture separates the males and females at birth. And her baby being a boy means he'll be taken away. so she's run away to Odo. Interesting that Troy would choose to marry somebody from such a misogynistic culture.
When she is classically, the character she's built is very much not that. She's very in control. She's very matriarchal.
Strong.
Yeah, it just doesn't seem to make any sense. And then especially specifically, now I kind of like the idea that she was so heartbroken with this like love that couldn't be with Odo, that she sought the comfort of another. That's great. But then to like get knocked up by she just seems too smart for that. So,
well, I mean, yes, I agree. She also, we know her to make rash decisions with men and throwing herself at inappropriate. Odo is not the first person that she has come on very strong with. A certain Jean-Luc caught a lot of flack on the Next Generation. So, who knows?
Okay.
Anyway, she's run away to Odo, and Lwaxana wants to stay on the station and be protected by Odo as a safe haven. Meanwhile, and of course, this is continuing the story of her and Odo from season 2, where they had a really nice, intimate couple of scenes.
On the elevator, right? While he was gooing.
On the elevator. Actually, twice.
Yeah.
She's been chasing Odo around the station. But
that episode's one of my favorites still. Yeah,
and they really do have a very interesting and deep relationship, which is, I think, the part that makes this episode, is the good part of this episode, continuing that part of it. So meanwhile, the alien lady, who Jake made eye contact with, goes up to Jake in the cafe, who's writing. She introduces herself and drops that she knew a super famous Cardassian architect. She says she has a weakness for artists, and that artists have a weakness for her as well. Which, of course, is every writer's fantasy, that there's some hot lady who's like, oh, you're a writer? Ooh! And that has not been my experience. Anyway, we also, we get the sense that the Cardassian architect that she knew died pretty young. But she says, isn't that what an artist wants? To be remembered? Isn't that why you write? And Jake says, I don't know. I think it's mostly because I like to tell stories. And Onoya says, there's no reason to hide your ambition, Jake. It's nothing to be ashamed of. I think that's what makes artists so compelling. Interesting conversation, I think. It's like, why do you write? And I think the truth is somewhere in between.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yes, you like telling stories, but you also want to be remembered. You want to plant a flag. You want to be relevant.
But the other thing that's, I think, being said here that is, it so often, especially in our current culture, if you're not discovered as a superstar, right? If you're just what I like to call one of the working denizens, people think, if you want to be in musicals, let's say, but our experience, you got to be on Broadway. That's the thing, right? Or if you're going to be a TV actor, if you don't have a series or a movie, you're not. There's a gulf, right? Truth is, 99.99% of all the working professionals in these arts are, working for the next paycheck. They're in the middle here, and so often I think people hide behind, this is just a trivial pursuit. It's like, I like to write or I like to sing or whatever, but it's like a stupid little, because they don't want to face the mountain of you. Well,
you have further to fall when you don't succeed.
Yeah. And so I think, and nobody, so I like that Jake, even here, even though they're establishing him as one of our main characters, and he is clearly a writer in the future we know of, or in an alternate potential future, he still doesn't have that confidence, and I like that this clearly malevolent force is using that as her in, and I think it's cool.
Yeah,
it has a lot to say.
Well, and you also wonder how much of Jake is saying, "I just like telling stories," and how much of it is, you want that because it's. I would imagine, I think in order to be successful, you have to have both.
Mm-hmm.
Right, you have to have that drive to succeed in a public way in order to have success. Like nobody as I talk about it in some of my shows, like nobody's going to come to your basement and make you famous.
Yeah.
You have to. It's the same reason like you can't become president without a towering ego.
No, I mean, the thing that makes...
You have to have that in order to want that job.
The thing that kind of makes that not the focus of this story, that, you know, like doesn't completely ring true on that, is that Jake is famously not unsupported. You know what I mean? It's not like the rest of us where it's like nobody believed him. Jake's got all the support. His dad's behind him. Everybody's behind him, right? So it's not like he's seeking that, right?
Well, behind him, well, you know what? This is an interesting thing because, like, speaking from the standpoint of, you know, feeling that way, there's a big difference between I support you doing this. You have my back, go get it, good for you. And attention paid to the work specifically. And focus on the work as opposed to like, good for you, but I'm not actually going to like really dig in and read and talk about your work because I think for myself, right? I don't want you to tell me, oh, you're such a great whatever, blah, 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 blah. I want to talk about the work. I want to dig into it. I want you to read it and let's discuss the things.
100%. But that's also not Jake's experience. I mean, the tag of this episode is his dad giving him like a full-throated book report on his writing.
No, for sure. And that's the payoff. Like that's the good stuff. That's really what I search for in life. Mm-hmm. So anyway, she offers him to help bring his talents to the surface. Come to my quarters tonight.
Come to my quarters.
I'm gonna help you write a novel.
Gonna suck the goo right out of your head.
Gonna make you write cursive.
Where'd you get that calligraphy pen? All right.
Editor's note. I don't know how old Jake is supposed to be here, but at least Sirik is 18 by now, making it only very creepy and not
Humphrey Bogart,
magnificently.
43 years old in Casablanca. Ingrid Bergman, 26.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's been worse.
It has been
All
worse.
right. So in Act 2, the next morning, Jake doesn't want to go on vacation with his dad and Cassidy.
So this is the leftover of the 4 romance stories, is like...
Right.
Cisco and Cassidy are going on a camping trip?
Yeah. I mean, probably a hunting trip.
With the jacket,
Yeah, because they had to hunt the throw rug that they turned that jacket into. It's like it's not a throw rug. It's a doormat. So Ben is disappointed, but he gets it. And Jake's an adult now, and he gets to make his own decisions. Plus, maybe a little more, stuff going on in the tent because Jake's not there. So
that tent is gonna pitch.
Well, we'll see. Well, you know what? I'm gonna have to. I think Mike needs like not a swear jar, but a boner jar. So
a boner bumper every time it's like. Bing!
No, because we need to put this into the K&M coffers. We need a boner jar, and every time you make a boner jar, you have to put $1 into the jar, and soon we can pay for our cat's college.
Every time there's a boner, I'll scratch it.
Great. Ow.
Sorry, man.
All right. Meanwhile, Lwaxana is bumming out Worf, Dax, and Kira with the story of her broken marriage.
Funny beat. Okay, Worf's take here is funny.
Oh, I mean, Dorn is a really good comedic actor. And I think Deep Space Nine does a really good job of taking advantage of that. So they're all dressed up in their Camelot getup from the Way of the Warrior. But of course, she makes her all sad, and Quark is pissed because she's bringing everyone down, perhaps with more emotional empath pushing. Mm-hmm. Who knows? But he tells Odo to cheer her up, or I'm gonna bounce her. So Odo does cheer her up by asking her to go for a walk. And Worf wants to go along, but he's not allowed to be a third wheel. Can you imagine, like, I want to go on a walk? Like, what if they took Worf? I want to write the alternate version where, like, Worf is there.
Yeah, because then that scene where they get to his quarters and she, like, asks herself in would be real funny and awkward.
I would like to come in. So on their walk, she mentions the death of her daughter Kestra from the Next Generation episode Dark Page, in which, just trivial trivia from that episode, Kestra was temporarily played by none other than a very young Kirsten Dunst.
Oh, okay.
So Odo understands why she would fight so hard not to give up another child, which she probably would have either way, but of course, having lost a child, it adds to it. Naturally, they arrive at Odo's door, and she creates a pretense to get into his quarters, using his replicator to get tea. And it did make me wonder, why does Odo have a replicator? He does not eat or drink. But I guess he has one for show.
Standard issue, maybe?
It's probably standard issue, or if he has guests over. I mean, he doesn't really do that, but whatever, he's got one. She notices his shape-shifting sculptures right away, and she forwardly asks Odo, "Are you over Kira?" And he says, "Well, she's banging Shakar," which Troy clocks is not the answer to her question. But she says, don't do what I did, or you're gonna end up pregnant and on the run. It's good line.
Yeah.
The baby kicks, and as Odo doesn't have any furniture, they sit down on the floor just as they did in the elevator. Odo feels the baby and is delighted. Lwaxana says, "Someone once said life is a search to find peace, and that the peace you once had when you were safe inside your mother." Odo says, "I didn't have a mother." Lwaxana says, "Don't worry, it's all right. You'll find your peace just the same." And Troy leans over and into Odo's lap and falls asleep. And he, instead of turning into a tent dollar, turns into a pillow and a blanket for her. It's very sweet. Their relationship has always been sweet.
And what they're able to do as great actors in these like little scenes, they're not long,
Yeah.
and I really think you could make the argument that in other hands, a lot of these scenes, this one particularly, would be trite, would feel trite, but it's not. And it's like saccharine as it is at the end there, and as kind of on the nose as the whole plot and writing is, it works. It worked for me. I gotta say, it works.
And there's some gravity built into this relationship because these are mature actors.
Yeah.
And they've had life. They've lived, and so they've have a lot more depth that they can bring to stuff. And I think it's
especially in TV, I feel like once you establish any sort of romantic chemistry, whether it be requited or unrequited, it's always there, and you can never get out from under it. And they're able here for this moment, because she's so disarming in the beginning, where she's like, "Don't worry, I'm not going to throw myself at you. I've moved past it." And she's able to be a sounding board for him about some of his maternal issues and the Kira stuff, that they're able to carve a space for this friendship underneath it that I think Odo ends up confusing. And it's just wonderful. It's hard to do.
It's complex. It's complex, and I really like telling a story, a love relationship, not love, who knows, but like a complex emotional relationship of two older characters. You always see the will they, won't they when they're 25, and it's nice to see them as adults.
Well, it turns out, Keith, don't know if you know this, just in relationships turned out to be complicated. So the most interesting ones are the ones that aren't just will they, won't they, because then when they will or won't, it becomes boring.
Yeah, well, there you go. So meanwhile, Jake takes his pad and knocks on the alien lady's door. And she has hung curtains and candles all over her quarters. She apparently packs very heavy.
What does Jake hung, Keith?
That's not my business.
Okay.
I mean, they're still a teenager. Keep your pants on.
What are you talking about? She hung up a lot of sheets. I was wondering what he hung.
Tip jar. Put $1 in the jar.
I mean, she really went for it. I mean, that's not even her spot. She's renting that Airbnb.
It's like a hotel room.
Yeah.
Like, she spent hours setting up all that stuff.
Famously not into open flame, but...
on a space station?
Yeah.
But no, open flame all you want. She can tell that Jake is nervous. He's never been alone in a woman's quarters before. She says, "Don't worry about it. You're just here to work."
Great beat there, actually, because I think they're so hitting you over the head with the like sexual subtext of what's going to or not going to happen here, especially. And I know Jake's all grown up, but it's still not hard not to see him as just like a teenager, and it is a little like the Graduate vibe here.
Very much so, yeah.
And I love that she is able to establish, and they establish, that this is for me, right? You're gonna get what you're gonna get out of this, but it's not that, right? That part's for me. Your part is to just sit down and write. And Sirik doesn't explicitly express a little disappointment, but it's not there. Like there is like a soupçon of, oh, okay, I guess I'll write.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. Well, and that is where you can see a writer wrote this. It's like, oh, my genius is sexy enough.
That's true. I didn't think.
Just kind of the thing, like, oh my God, this incredibly attractive lady is just going to be so turned on by my genius. I just need to write in her presence.
See, man, I'm the one who's going to defend it, because that is, I think, the pejorative view. But here's the reality of it, I think. Look, I'm in the arts. I also want people to want my genius. But that said, there are things that I can't do. I've said this before. Dance is one of them. When you see someone dance at that level, at a high level, it's hard not to see it as an intangible magic.
Oh,
right?
for sure.
And if you told me that you were able to just like suck it in, right? Look, I've been attracted to talent crushes, right? You are totally attracted to this person. They're kind of psycho on the other side, but it's what they can do is intoxicating to me. So this is just sort of a sci-fi manifestation of that intoxication. And I think it's not just a sort of writer fantasy, right? I think there is actual storytelling.
No, for sure. It is all of that. I mean, and I agree with you completely. Like, I've had plenty of talent crushes, and it is mesmerizing to watch genius manifest. Excuse me, like there's no question. And when you have a chance to see it, like, you do get enraptured by it.
It's difficult to see it on the promenade of a space station, see the writing genius of a person.
Well, but she has powers.
Yeah.
She is some sort of like a, sniffing dog for talent. Yeah. So she should be an agent. So Jake has an idea for a novel, semi-autobiographical about somebody whose mother died. Mm-hmm. And she gives him a famous space pen and encourages him to write on old school paper. And she encourages him as he shows his impressive cursive handwriting. I wonder who the hand double was for that, because I very much doubt that was Jake.
Do you think she makes him write it out with the magic pen and all? I'm trying to save it with you, buddy. To prolong it?
Probably.
Because if he's just typing it or using what I imagine, I mean, we have Vision Pro where you can just like think it and the words show up, or that there's probably more efficient ways to do it quickly.
But it's the sexy way.
Yeah, you gotta do it slow, man. You gotta do the Sting style. You gotta go do some tantric
wrestler?
writing.
I'm like, the wrestler?
You gotta dress up like the Crow.
Come out of the ceiling with a baseball
bat. Yeah. No, I'm talking. He's like Sting the musician. He's got to do tantric writing.
Yeah. Well, fair enough. So she touches the back of his neck and all creepily in ASMR whispers. He starts writing frantically, and of course, she starts sucking brain goo energy out of his head and into her hands and brings it down and out of frame. That was, I think, perhaps the oddest director decision. That because later it's like it's not that, but this is like whoop down.
Isn't
out
the
of
most
frame.
tropey of trope things though? Like when something's too much, so your nose starts bleeding. I feel like you.
Oh, it's the tropiest.
It's the easiest. Oh, his nose started bleeding.
Well, but here's the thing. I have a theory about this part of this episode, and see if it tracks all the way through. This inspiration lady, I think she's a metaphor for cocaine.
I mean,
Because-
it's not a terrible hypothesis.
Is the Muse just about coke? Who knows? So in Act 3, later, Lwaxana and Odo are playing hide-the-goo in his quarters. He appears out of one of the sculptures, and they're both having a blast. And Odo jumps around like a little kid, including...
But Renee is...
Like,
probably
Renee
not.
actually jumps off of that sculpture. And, like, I don't think it's a double. It was pretty impressive. Like, I'm worried for Renee's knees.
I don't know. That doesn't look real to me, but...
Well, that might be, but he jumps down later,
He does
and
jump
it's
down
him.
from some, yeah, that shot.
Yeah, that's the second one. Yeah, I think they composited it to make the sculpture look bigger, but that's a pretty good leap that he did himself.
I think it's a great journey for him to show what's intoxicating to him about her, right? It's
Right.
this, and that's like she said. You'll find someone who makes you feel safe. She carves out a space for safety for him, of comfort and safety.
Yeah, and what's interesting, what emerges when he feels safe, is his youth.
Yes,
He's like a
Brandon,
kid.
Yeah.
He's like there's a joyful youth to him when he feels safe, which means that his gruff exterior means he's never really felt safe, which I think is very interesting. And we see it when he gets a call from security. Lwaxana's husband has arrived. Odo's affect changes and his voice changes like a light switch when he gets the call, and I think it's a great performance.
Yeah.
But I think it's an interesting character thing as well. So later, Lwaxana's husband arrives in Odo's office. He knows all about Odo and that Odo broke her heart. And he demands his child. Odo says nope, and points out that according to their laws, this species law, the male child is property of the mother's husband, not the child's father necessarily. And he says, by the time Lwaxana gives birth, you will not be her husband. And we cut straight to Odo's quarters where he explains his plans. Odo wants to marry Lwaxana, which will nullify their previous marriage. Just for a couple of months. It's not as if I was planning to marry someone else. The only weird part is that her husband wants to be there and witness the marriage, because their marriage ceremony involves a profession of love that can be challenged if anyone doubts the sincerity of the groom. So Odo is going to have to convince her ex that he actually wants to marry her. So a couple of things there that are, I think, plot convenient, but also set up an interesting thing. I mean, obviously, there's no like divorce, there's no like settlements like that. All you have to do is like marry somebody else, and then the previous marriage is annulled by default.
Yeah, but it's sort of like lazy plot convenience too, because from my grok of it, it's not that he has a right to be at the ceremony, in which he can object to the profession of love, but Odo acquiesced and said he could be there, in which this takes place.
I actually took that as it was his right.
Okay, I didn't.
As it was anybody's right.
It makes much more sense if that's the case, but I don't think that was clearly done. It definitely played out like a oopsie. He said he wanted to be there, and I said that's okay, because she had to do a whole explanation as to why that was a bad call.
Yeah. Although I think both of those things can be true at the same time.
Very fair.
Like Odo didn't know that he had the right to it when he said yes,
Yeah.
but I think he did have the right. I
And that
think
gives
this part
us
of
the
the
option to do
ceremony is to give
exposition.
people a chance to object.
Which is famously, it actually gives a little credence to the weird way we do it too, or a lot of people do it in our society. Like if anyone is,
it's all weird.
It's weird, yeah.
It's all weird. So, meanwhile, Jake is still writing frantically while the lady sucks light out of Jake's brain. And he gets a nosebleed, and she says, "You should rest," but he wants to keep going. Because he's on coke. But also, like, this is part of the episode.
Yeah, but Coke would never be like, take it easy, buddy. Your dad's gonna find out.
That's true. Cool it. You
Your
don't want
dealer's
more
never
of me.
like, yeah, it's good, man. Well, I'll hit you up tomorrow.
Well, that and that is, it's a wormhole that I have.
Yeah, it makes no sense.
In her behavior here, why is she telling him to stop multiple times?
Well,
I understand his compulsion to keep going, because I understand intimately if you're in the flow, you do not want to stop. You want to go because you're feeling it. You've got it. You know, when I'm writing, I can wake up in the morning, play 2 notes on the piano, and know whether I've got it or I don't. And if I don't, I walk away. But if I've got it, that has to be the priority.
Yeah, from his perspective. From her perspective, I guess let's look at her as a vampire of sorts, right? And famously, you want to, if you're in a place where there's not just bleeders everywhere, right, where you have a limited supply, you would want to keep them alive and not let them bleed out.
Which I think is her motivation.
Yeah. And
there.
also, if he stays out too late and Ben comes looking, she could lose a meal.
Yeah, so I mean, it seems like she's trying to string him on for a while, but by the end she switches, which probably is because she realizes that it's now or never.
Mm-hmm.
So might as well bleed him dry. I you know what? I think we fixed the wormhole.
Which she ends up doing to all of her victims, right? And
Right,
she knows
right, but
that. So I think she knows inevitably.
Yeah, she knows that inevitably he's going to die, but it's like, how many meals can I get out of this?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well,
especially at this point, because I imagine she's realized, oh, he is one of the greats. So I can get a couple out of this, maybe.
Let's see how long I can string this along, because he's so young.
Mm-hmm.
So he's strong.
He can go all night. You know what I mean?
He can go all night. Yeah, exactly.
Writing.
So in Act 4, we arrive at the wedding. O'Brien, Kira, and Bashir are in attendance, but they're
and the king
very
from
confused.
King and I.
And the king from King and I has arrived. They're all very confused. Odo emerges wearing some blue marriage robes and is immediately confronted by Lwaxana's husband. He offers Odo a chance to get out and avoid this charade. Then Lwaxana emerges in a similar marriage gown holding a glowy egg. Odo begins his speech. In keeping with the Tavnian tradition, I stand before you, here in my home among my worldly possessions, and declare my wish to add this woman to that which is mine. Not a great start. Jael challenges immediately. Prove it to us. And Odo gives this speech, which I think is actually pretty good. Before I met her, my world was a much smaller place. I kept to myself. I didn't need anyone else, and I took pride in that. The truth is, I was ashamed of what I was, afraid if somebody saw how truly different I was, they would recoil from me. Lwaxana saw how different I was, and she didn't recoil. She wanted to see more. For the first time in my life, someone wanted me as I was, and that changed me forever. The day I met her is the day I stopped being alone, and I want her to be part of my life from this day on. Marry me, Lwaxana. Let me into your light. It's a good speech, and it's truthful, though it is also true of several other folks on the station for Odo. Because I think Lwaxana broke through some of his walls, but like a lot of people do not, all of our heroes, they don't recoil from the fact that he's different. They're like, great, go about yourself. But
I don't know that it's what they're going for. But what I love about this speech, actually, we hinted at it before, is that, we get so caught up in, I talk about this often when people are getting married, with the capital M marriage, right? That somehow there's this one type of marriage, this one definition of marriage, of love, that you subscribe to, and that, we're getting married, and so here it is. But that is just famously not true, right? It's very much your marriage, what you determine, why you want to get married, what your rule set will be, what your relationship is. It's all specific
the boundaries
to you.
are,
And here he's describing, just from listening to the monologue, beautiful. You would say, absolutely, the two of you should be wed and we are supportive. But, as she'll point out later, that's not the relationship that he has fallen in love with, right? It's just a different, it's very real.
And also, like, he has defined what he is looking for.
Yes.
But that's not what she wants.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that is, and I think especially in these days, like you said, what is a marriage? Well, that is defined by the people in it, and period, right? And that can mean any number of different things and any different combinations and all sorts of these, and it's not nearly as scripted as it ever was.
Which in
but
this episode,
it has to be by mutual consent. Whatever it is, must be. You have to agree on whatever it is, and nobody else is involved. Just the people in the marriage.
What's fun about this episode is that they juxtapose that with a very stringent property-based marriage, right? So it makes those ideas even more seem what he's pitching even more foreign.
Yeah, well, and
the gulf between like the love he's describing and where it's coming from.
Well, and so much of the talk of marriage in this episode, and it's partly this culture and partly some of our own culture, is talking about ownership, talking about possession, and it is, that's very much a part of our culture. It is, and in some cultures, and certainly in our history, that we are property of each other, and it. I think it was supposed to ring leaden in 1996, but especially today, it's like, Anyway, so he gives the speech, and to his credit, Jayal, the guy, declines to object again, and Lwaxana swoons a bit. And Jayal says to Lwaxana, "I cherished you. You were my most treasured possession. Take care of our son. When he asks, speak well of me," which of course reminded me, but 150 years ago, when I was still an actor, I did a reading of an adaptation of of the show. Hold on, I actually found out what it was. Of The Awakening, a musical adaptation of the Kate Chopin novel The Awakening, in which I played the bad guy ex-husband Léonce. And I sang a song called My Favorite Possession, which is it's a sort of this beautiful love song thingy, but it was just talking about her as property. And I was like, oh, I remember those. I remember that part. Anyway, it was that's where I met a certain agent / bail bondswoman.
One of the best, one of the most famous inside jokes
we both
of
worked
our
with.
lives.
Yeah, there it is. Anyway, Quark offers to throw a party for the happy couple. Could it be because he's actually happy for Odo? Or is he covering his jealousy? Who knows? Tough to say. A lot of machinations happening here. And Lwaxana says, "Oh, Odo, you were wonderful. For a minute there, I really believed you wanted to marry me. I suppose that we should tell them the truth, but let's wait until after the party." Meanwhile, the creativity vampire is still sucking on Jake's brain. It's been days. And I wrote, she's oddly trying to talk him out of continuing to work, and she forces him to stop, which I think we now understand why. He thinks he can finish the novel in a few days, but she says, with rest, you'll do better. Come back later. Jake leaves and gets on the turbolift. He starts to get lightheaded and stumbles. Then he finally collapses.
I think they do a great job. I know it got nominated for costuming, but actually the makeup on Sierra Kier is great. They really do make him seem drained, which is cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's got a creativity vampire sucking on his head.
Also known as I didn't sleep for a few days.
That's always my excuse. Mm-hmm. That's why I look like I haven't slept in 1,000 years. So we cut to the infirmary, and Bashir explains to Sisko that his cortex was on the verge of synaptic collapse, but he's gonna be okay. Jake talks in his sleep and asks where the creativity vampire went. Later, a nurse checks on...
In my head, I just kept hearing the Viagra commercial. It's like, if you've had an erection last longer than 4 hours, please seek medical attention.
I mean, writing in cursive for longer than ever cursive, kids, is something they forced all old people to learn how to write in school for no effing reason.
You know when I became an adult was when I decided I wasn't writing in cursive anymore. When I was like, it's my handwriting and I'm taking it back.
Oh my God, no, I have no, I mean, I was such a little shit in school that I would have complained about, like, this is irrelevant to our lives. And I don't think they force kids to learn anymore.
No.
I think that is just a vestige of being old people. But, like, that was like a whole thing.
Yeah,
my handwriting is atrocious.
Oh, my handwriting is bad, straight bad. Now, my wife, you want to talk about love, folks. My wife thinks that it's very flowery and beautiful. She's like, oh, your handwriting. I was like, no, man, that is straight bad. She thinks
your handwriting?
She thinks it's a creative choice.
Wow. Yeah, mine is so bad that if you ever like got into my archives and all, like, I've notebook after notebook while I'm ideas or writing lyrics or whatever, it is safe from anyone being able to decode it because I am so lazy and usually
the
in
World
too
War
much
II
of a
ciphers
hurry,
themselves couldn't.
Like, only I can read it because I usually will just do the first letter of the word and a line because it's too slow to write out the whole word. Anyway,
congratulations to this lady for being on Star Trek.
This is a very frequent Star Trek. She's the stunt woman. We've seen a custom figure of her. She's everybody's stunt double.
Hard to hide her because she's a large human.
Well, yeah, but she's gonna die for the 19th time on this episode. Is that Patricia Tallman? I don't know. Maybe it's not. Anyway, later, a nurse checks on the still sleeping Jake when the vampire emerges, invisible, all glowy, and knocks the nurse aside. Pretty cool. I thought the effect looked pretty good, actually.
Yeah, I also love that the line preceding it was Bashir. He's like, I won't take him out of my sight. Except for that one pee break.
So immediately he's out. She says, time to keep writing. I think she knows the game is up, so she's got to drain them now. So in Act 5, Sisko, Bashir, and O'Brien discover the psionic energy residue, and they go off on a search. And we discover
they just followed the luminol trail of whatever secretions were taking place.
Gross.
Come on, man. It's what they're doing.
I mean, I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying you did it in the grossest possible way.
Well, I mean, I have one job.
We have a brand.
Yeah.
So, do I keep making myself smaller and you keep making me bigger again?
I'm not touching you, man.
All right, great. It's like if you're watching this, so like I come into this setup every time, and I'm like, okay, Keith, you're ready to go. This is how Mike crops me for this part of the show.
That's not even you hadn't changed at all. I don't even know what you're seeing. I think your eyes are bugging out.
No, I have been adjusting it as we've been talking to make myself a little smaller. Anyway,
Jake's been attempting that adjustment, but it hasn't been going well.
No. So we discover that she's pulled Jake into a Jeffries tube and is still sucking out his brain energy as he keeps writing. He gets another nosebleed, and Sisko and a security officer are in the tubes hunting her down. In her arms, Jake passes out. She wakes him up and forces him to keep writing. Then Sisko drops from the ceiling with a phaser, and he tries to beam Jake out, but they can't. And Onaya says, it's not what I am that matters, it's what I do. You don't know the minds I've touched. Calatus, Tarbalide, Keats, 100 others.
Varney!
Varney! Where's my potential? She has unlocked all of their potential, but Varney was useless. The goo there was nothing. It's just spitting out dust. Is that...
Little do you know, you cut to her sitting on the board of Nampt, or Nymph. Being like, this one's pretty good.
Yeah, I had him reach his potential, which was nothing.
Now tell him, who's going to tell him he has to pay for it?
Yeah, my God. Sure did.
We've selected you for our festival. Here's the bill.
It's funny. I was having a conversation with the producers that I work with, Craig and Sherry, the other night, and they're like, "So why did NIMP fail?" And I'm like, "Well, let's start with where the money came
Yeah,
from."
they charged you.
Oh, it's craziness.
That's what you won. Anyway, different podcast.
Yes, I think I still owe people money over that. So Cisco says, "Is that what you did to Jake? Inspire him? Look at him." And she says, "Well, they all die in the end, but look what I give in return. Immortality. Their names will live on forever." And she explains that she travels around the universe sucking on the talents of folks to eat. So here's the question for the desperate artist in both of us. If somebody said, "All right, I will give you everything you've ever wanted. You will be remembered forever. You as an artist will live on and have succeeded, but you're going to die at 35. Or you'll die at 85, but you'll never have been successful." And I think about that as someone who's...
Although...
What's that?
I said, this just in, folks. Spoiler alert, I'm going to finally reveal Keith's idea for a new musical. It's called Damn Yankees. And it's about this ultimatum. No, you probably could have tempted me much more when I was a younger man. But as I get older, and I kind of realize that the life and happiness and fulfillment and success takes many forms. I'm less inclined to want to die at 35, especially since it'd be over. But listen, there are still nights where I sleep and I think about some what ifs or what could be's, and they're pretty tantalizing. So it's not a fool's errand to run that thought experiment.
Well, and it's interesting because I think about it. I think I would have the opposite trajectory there, because I think at 25 I'll be like, I don't need no help. It's gonna happen anyway, right? Like, it's inevitable. At 35 I'll be like, I don't what's going on. 45 I'm like, I don't know, maybe. But I kind of like my life, and like I still want it, but like it's not. At 85 on my deathbed, I'll be like, yeah, sure, I'll take it.
I will say, I'll tell a quick aside. There's a lot wrapped in this, so prepare. So there's a show that in my late 20s into my 30s I was continually up for on Broadway and tours, and it was like the big break thing, and it was right for it, and it was about to happen so many times, and it wasn't happening. And because it was so close, I sacrificed pursuing anything else and just focused on this one thing, this one show, because, though I wouldn't say this out loud, if I can do that, I will have proved all the other failures and other
justifies
the whole goddamn thing.
Yep.
Which couldn't have been a bigger mistake, but that's the journey I was on. But life progressed, things happened, I met my wife, and the moment I got proposed, I think we were married. I got offered to do the show out on a contract for 9 months on a ship. And finally do it. Finally said, and I said in the moment, I was like, yes. I got the call when I was in my therapist's office. And I remember going next door and celebrating, and then celebrating with Jen, and then talking about how we would make the next 9 months work. And I realized I'm not going to make the next 9 months work. Like, it is not worth the first 9 months of being married, where you're establishing stuff, to instantly go away. And so, I said no. And like, that was that. I cannot get cast in that show regionally anywhere now. It's like I'm not saying there's a blacklist, but if there is, I'm freaking on it. But that's as close as I can kind of make an analogy to that offer being made, right? Finally. But I mean, you could also say I finally earned the opportunity to do it. But yeah, I said no because I chose other life.
Yeah, well, and it's tough, and I certainly understand fixating on one opportunity at the expense of all others, and then looking back on it 20 years later, like, what was I doing?
Yeah.
I
could have done so many other things.
Thought this was the only thing. This was the only light, and it cost me, on the NIP show. I was like, this is the one guy. I'm sure it's going to happen, so I'm going to close all the other doors. And it's been 15 years, and I'm like, hello. Anyway, so she explains that
now,
she travels.
if they give you the ultimatum, you could go and do it all over again, and make different choices along the way. That's much more of a thought experiment I would do.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I don't have many regrets. I love how how my life has ended up. It's not perfect, obviously, but like I feel pretty good. Would I like to have changed a couple of those decisions if I go back to being 30 again and redo the last 15 years? Yeah, but I think in those new choices, I would lose some stuff that I really cherish today. So, anyway, where were we?
Sorry about that.
So Onaya explains that she travels around the universe sucking on the talents of folks to eat. She is a talent vampire. She starts to disappear and Cisco shoots her. But of course it has no effect. She turns into a ball of energy and zooms off into space. The ball of energy shooting out of the ship, something we saw in Next Gen a lot, but this is visually a way better version of that than we've seen. So later, Lwaxana comes in super happy to Odo's office and announces, "I'm out of here." Odo tries to talk her into staying, but she resists. She says, "You've gotten used to having me around, haven't you? Oh, you dear, sweet man, don't you see? What you want is company, someone to take care of." And Odo says, "Is that so wrong?" "No, of course not. The problem is I want much more than that from you. You see, I can't help it. I'm still in love with you, and as much as I wish that you were in love with me, I know you're not. I could stay. I could try to make you fall in love with me, but we both know it won't happen. Then I'd end up resenting you, and our friendship is far too important for me to let that happen. That's why it's better for both of us if I leave now." And folks, she found a way out of the friend zone. And I think that shows a tremendous amount of wisdom from her and openness and vulnerability from her to do that. She kisses Odo and says, "Goodbye, husband. Goodbye, wife." So she leaves. They're still married. Back in Cisco's quarters, Ben walks in having read Jake's novel. He compliments the novel, but points out Jake's lousy spelling. Jake says, "I know it's good. I just wish I had written it. I wish I wrote it." And Cisco says, "Listen to me. You wrote those words, not her. But she got them out of me. And that means they were somewhere inside you. And all you have to do is learn to find them for yourself." Lastly, we see the title of the novel. It's Anselm, the novel that made Jake famous on The Visitor. And we hear a touch of the score from that episode, which I thought was a really nice touch.
Did we open this season with that, or was that last season?
It was second episode of this season.
Okay. Man, it feels like a year ago.
Well, yeah. But really cool to have that connect the dots there. So, uh-oh.
Yeah. Where'd you go, buddy?
There I am. Ooh. Well, my computer's been sad lately. Maybe I should do a clean reinstall of Windows.
They will never see you again.
But before we do, it's time to move along home. Okay. So, Mike, let us begin, as we always do, with our best moments. Mike, what was your best moment?
What happened to wormholes?
Oh.
Isn't that how we usually start?
It is indeed how we start, but
you were fixated on your size again.
I accidentally deleted the wormholes from my script. So when I say, as we always do, it's not because I remember.
You're very small.
I'm trying to fix two things at once. Keep your pants on. Jeez.
I could fix you since that's kind of what I'm doing over here, but
No.
Okay,
I'm having to override. I'm overriding you.
We talked about a lot of the wormholes, so let's not belabor, but Yeah, go ahead. I'm gonna make you start because I'm blanking right now.
Yeah, well, honestly, I don't think there's a lot of wormholes.
There's almost not enough plot for there to be wormholes.
Yeah, I mean, why does Lwaxana marry this guy in the first place? Sure, I think it's a fair question, but we also know that she's Lwaxana. She does weird stuff.
Yeah.
And she makes rash and foolish decisions in love. So, like, I buy that. The talent vampire, like, sure, I'll buy that. And I think having fixed why she would try to get him to stop, I think that makes sense too. So whether you like or dislike the episode, I think it all tracks.
Yeah. And I would say that the wormhole of, potentially you could say that, like, leaving it ambiguous at the end, did she help him? Did he need her? All that stuff is already answered because we know the alternate future where he didn't need her, clearly, because he wrote the book. So the book gets written in other strands of the string theory. So I think that's pretty tight too.
Yeah. So interestingly, I couldn't find any wormholes. Let's talk about best moment.
There's so many good scenes here. You could argue the whole wedding sequence, the monologue there is great. The kind of Lwaxana's her sort of all the way full circle moment at the end where she de-friend zones and sort of reestablishes or redefines their relationship is pretty great. But I think for me, it's the retreading of the elevator moment. I think the way that they, where they're in his quarters and he comforts her while she's comforting him is very much, and they even call back to it where she says, "Oh, I feel like a changeling without his bucket." And he gets to talk about his. I just feel like they recaptured the magic of that moment. They referenced that moment and yet had it be something new and showed their progression and yet where they started. And in a snapshot, they were able to show where they came from, where they are. It was beautiful. That scene is my best moment.
Yeah, I think that's good. I mean, for me, I think it's the resolution of their relationship where she has the wisdom that we all look for someday to those of us who have been hard friend zoned many times in their life, and probably will again pretty soon. But like the strength it takes to disentangle yourself from that, and the wisdom that it takes, I think Lwaxana shows. While she doesn't show growth and she makes terrible decisions with men, she does show some growth there and some self-awareness, that she never showed with Picard. She was always sort of like teasing him, he's in love with her, whatever. With Odo, she took her shot, right? She really connected with the guy, really built a relationship with him, tried to make it romantic, but it wasn't. And I think her realizing that, I thought it was really well done, and I think the way her last monologue there was great, and I think her performance of it was great. So, for me, it's the thing we should all learn from: how to get ourselves out of the friend zone and try not to, and friend zone doesn't have to be romantic, right? Any relationship that you have with another person that is unrequited in some fashion. Whether it's romantic, whether it's a type of friendship, whether it's a business relationship, if they don't want to give you what you want, you have to adjust. And I think that shows some boundaries internally, so it helps you fight off codependence or whatever, just to be able to look objectively at a relationship and accept it on its own terms and not what you want it to be. I like that. So, are we going to throw some stem bolts at the Muse?
Famously, Keith's most not in any way vocally manipulated bumper.
Yeah.
You get some stem bolts. Hell yeah, they are self-sealing. Here are some stem bolts for you.
Keith, you're so talented that people accuse you of being AI generated.
I mean, I'll take it. And I didn't even have somebody sucking my brain.
Yeah, well, there's so many things I want to say.
Or anything else? Is that what you're trying to say?
So,
Look, I got the t-shirt, okay? World's best ex-husband.
So let's get to like what I think people's problems with this are, and it's it's the fact that both storylines have, I think, some really cool ideas and are written from a cool pitch. The pitch meeting, I'm in. I'm there.
Yeah.
It's just so MacGuffined of MacGuffins,
Yeah.
MacGuffin, that it's hard to chew, right? So, case in point.
Like MacGuffin.
Yeah, the great idea to get her back and have an episode with Major Barrett.
With Major Dad.
Yeah, Major Dad. Yeah, welcome to MajorWorld.com. That's a very regional Queens. Remember that guy? He was always on.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Anyway, we'll make her pregnant. But then I swear to you when I say every 5 seconds, I forgot she was pregnant. The baby.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter, right? And it's, when you think about it, you're like, we should be taking like this life a little seriously. The only time they kind of do it is Odo at the end. He's like, don't you think you're pretty pregnant? Maybe you should just like now stay? Like, nah, whatever.
Nah.
So that feels like, okay. And then the energy vampire is so freak of the week from any other show. Just like completely, and they tease it out. I kept asking myself what is the why? What is the plot at play? This is a show that is so good at creating multi-layered, three-dimensional chess bad guys with different like political motivations, manifestations of their needs, multi-tiered stakes. That I was like, so it's just she just wants to suck his brain goo? She's just hungry? Which is fine.
Yeah, she's basically a parasite.
Yeah, which is fine, but something must be missing if the whole episode you're like, what is she gonna do? Like, what's she shooting for here? And you never kind of get that, and so it feels unsatisfying. Maybe it's a little hokey too, but
yeah.
To be honest, I really think, and maybe our viewers will agree or disagree, because I know the sort of reputation of this one.
Right.
I think because of the relationship, the way that we've, as a society, begun to sort of understand, if not tolerate, different types of relationships and the complexity of relationships since the 90s, this episode actually has kind of grown a little more meaning over the years. I think there's enough that you can brain suck out of the relationship portion of this story that it has some stuff to say, and it touched me a little bit, and I really enjoyed that. And the brain goo stuff, maybe I have to work a little too hard to extrapolate the meaning and to make it important, but it's not absent by any stretch. I actually think it's pretty good. Do I think the episode, the plot lines have anything to do with one another? No. And it's hard to get over the sheer convenience of everything happening, as you mentioned. But I do not think it is a swing and a miss. I actually rather enjoyed my time with it. And I kind of love the energy vampire of it all. And she's just gonna like beam out to do another. And also it's just like, also reminded me of how like non-threatening. You can't look badass with a phaser. Even Ben tried there at the end and he just looks stupid. You have to see good, like, fun phaser action. Anyway, I didn't hate it. I wrote down a straight 70 here, which is probably high on the scale of where people think this goes, but I thought it was all right.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think I feel similar to you. So we usually do this at the very end, but I think it's important to, as we talk about the context of this episode, on IMDb, this is a 5.7. It is ranked 171 out of 173 episodes. It is the third worst episode of all of Deep Space Nine.
I just gave it a 70, dude.
Yeah, and I, it's funny because like I think about it again, the context of when I'm 16 and I'm watching this versus today. I think when I'm 16, it's boring.
Well, nothing
Right.
happens.
Nothing happens, right? There's no pew-pews. There's a little bit of stakes, right? Because, like, Jake's going to get his brain sucked. But, like, it's not going to happen. It has no bearing on any of the rest of the universe. It's not part of the other story. And so, the lack of storytelling with the energy vampire, like, it's not even a story, really. Like, there's no beginning, middle, and end to that story. She sucks on his brain, it makes him right, then she goes away. Right? There's nothing there other than an interesting idea.
And like an execution, she looks cool. She's scary looking, and her performance is scary and sexy.
Yeah.
And...
So, and the Odo Lwaxana thing, I think, people, I think, unfairly have hated Lwaxana. She's much more annoying on Next Gen than she ever was on Deep Space Nine. But I think she brought in a lot of that baggage. People just like, oh god, another Lwaxana episode. The what we're dealing with Odo they're very small feelings. They're very intimate stuff. But I think it's important for Odo's journey. I think Odo going through this is important. I think everything he said in his speech is relevant to his character. And I think that Lwaxana does play an important role in Odo's journey, unlocking certain pieces of him that open him up to other experiences and other people. And so I think, like, actually in the trilogy story of Lwaxana and Odo, I actually really like it. I think it's really interesting. So I do not hate this episode the way it is hated by the universe. Do I think it's great? No, I don't think it's great. But when I think about the legendarily bad episodes of Deep Space Nine, right, there are two criteria that I think really make it bad. One, if it makes no sense, right? If just like structurally it's utter nonsense and has no consequences, and it's just like, what is happening? I don't know. It just really wasn't thought through, and it's just bad writing because they didn't think through the story that they were doing. And you have characters acting out of character and doing damage to this, that, the other thing. Or it's something like super offensive, and like they're just like, really just, wow, I can't believe you put that on television. That's so wrong-headed and whatever. And we're going to hit one. And I think, so to me, that's what makes a bad episode. This one, well, it might be slight. It might be a little undercooked in some ways. The characters act like the characters, right? Everything makes sense. It is a story that has an A to B to C, at least, especially the Odo one, right? And it actually continues the story. Now, it continues the story emotionally, right? Character development-y wise. It doesn't continue the pew-pews, but it pushes Odo forward. It pushes Jake forward.
Yeah.
Right? Out of this experience, he's now really, at least temporarily, tapped into his potential as a writer, and now he is a thing that he can aspire to get back to and work on that journey. And so I think that that's actually kind of important for Jake. And so as a result, like, am I like, oh, I can't wait to watch the Muse again? No.
Yeah.
But like, I think it's definitely not worse than some of the other episodes this season. And so so for me, I'm going to give it a 73. Like, it's not spectacular, but it's not terrible. And I know everyone says the Muse is terrible, terrible, terrible. I don't think so. But I'm really interested to hear what you think. If you think the Muse is terrible, write a treatise below, because I'm really curious about, like, why is this episode so universally hated?
Yeah. Well, the other thing that's important, I think, too, is that we've discovered, you and I, over all the other shows we've watched, that these things you can't, at least the way that we are approaching this, you can't really look at them in a vacuum. And by this point in season 4, I've come to love these characters. I know where Odo is on his journey. I know where Jake has come from, where he's going. And so just spending time with them, yeah, maybe there's a MacGuffin. Maybe there's a bad guy who doesn't really have a beginning, middle, end. But just seeing Odo go through this experience, no matter how small, is important, is impactful. I would watch it again. I would watch the scene work between those two for days.
Yeah.
So, I take all those points, but I know for once we have a hot take, Keith. We kind of like this one.
Hot take, folks. The Muse is mediocre. It is not terrible. It is just okay.
Tell us why we're wrong.
Tell us why we're wrong. Let's fight, internet. Let's fight for this mediocrity.
Yeah.
All right. So next week we are going to be talking about For the Cause. We are getting into the end of season 4, so we're going to start picking up some momentum
only
here.
6 more.
Yeah, we're getting into the back end, and then coming up on season 5. Woof! Here we go. Can't wait. Super fun. Thanks for watching our little show here. You can also check out our other shows. We do a thing about Star Trek toys. That's fun. You can also check out Out of Practice podcast, where we discuss David E. Kelly's award-winning series, The Practice. If you want more of this, we got a lot more. Thank you to all of our patrons. You can find them at patreon.com/K&M. Our socials are here. We'll see you back next week. Till then, this has been Keith and Mike Watch Deep Space Nine. Thank you for watching K&M Entertainment. If you enjoyed our particular brand of nonsense, please like and subscribe. Or become one of our patrons at patreon.com/K&M.